Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Learn Academic English. In today's video, I'm continuing my series about sentences with a video about how to use semicolons. If you have not watched the other videos in this series, you may want to go back and check out the video about dependent and independent clauses, sentence fragments, how to use different kinds of conjunctions, including conjunctive adverbs. So today we'll focus on this punctuation mark, the semicolon. This is something that's really useful for you to know if you are needing to use English in your school or work, because semicolons are used in more formal situations. We almost never use them in casual or informal writing, but in work, memos, or very formal writing, essay writing for school, we do sometimes use them. So first, let's take a quick look at what an independent clause is, because that's something that you'll need to know in order to understand the rules. An independent clause is basically a sentence. An independent clause has a subject and a verb. Sometimes we can take a clause and we can combine it with another clause to make a longer sentence. Semicolons have four basic rules. Some of them are more common than others. I'll go through those rules one by one and I'll show you some examples, and then at the end of the video I'll give you a little quiz so you can check your knowledge. So first, the most common way to use a semicolon is to join two independent clauses, and there are two ways that we can do that. First, we can join two independent clauses that have related ideas. So you're going to think of the semicolon here as working in the same way that the word and would work. You're going to join two clauses that have similar or very closely related ideas. For example, soccer is the world's most popular sport. People around the world watch and play it. So here we have two independent clauses. The first clause has a subject and a verb and some other words at the end. And then the second clause has a subject and a verb, actually two verbs. So here what we're doing is, instead of putting a period and starting a new sentence, we can see that these ideas are very closely related. They're similar. They sound like we could join them with the word and. So instead of making two sentences, we make one long sentence by joining them with a semicolon. The other thing that we could do here is we could make what's called a compound sentence by using a comma and the word and. But because we might use the sentence in a more formal situation, we're going to choose to use the semicolon here. Now you want to be careful because we don't use a semicolon when the clauses don't have a closely related meaning. For example, if the clauses should be combined with the word but, which shows different ideas, or so, which shows a result, or which shows a choice, then we would not use a semicolon. For example, soccer is the world's most popular sport. It is not as popular as American football in the US. So these clauses are talking about the same topic, about soccer, but if you look closely, they should be joined with the word but or however, because they show difference or contrast. They're showing two different ideas, that around the world soccer is the most popular sport, but in the United States, American football is more popular. So here, a semicolon is not a good way to join these clauses. Instead, we should use a comma and but, or we could use a semicolon with the word however. We need to show contrast. If we don't include a conjunction that shows contrast, then there's some meaning that is missing. Let's see another example. Soccer is the world's most popular sport. Pro soccer players earn extraordinary salaries. So here, which meaning is the best way to connect these clauses? Would you choose and, but, or so? I would choose the word so. The reason is that the first clause shows the cause, the reason. Soccer is the world's most popular sport. And then what happens next? What's the result? What's the effect? The effect is that professional players earn very large salaries. So here, if we use only a semicolon, some of the meaning is missing. Therefore, we should use a comma with so or a semicolon and then the word therefore. We need the conjunction to connect those two clauses clearly. Okay, let's move on to the second rule. The second rule is that we can join two independent clauses with a conjunctive adverb. And we saw a little preview of this in my previous examples. For example, soccer is the world's most popular sport. However, in the United States, American football is more popular. So again, we have two independent clauses with a subject and a verb. In the second one, the subject is American football and the verb is. Now here, these two clauses show difference or contrast, opposite ideas. To join them well, we're going to use the conjunctive adverb however. And when we use a conjunctive adverb, we can use a semicolon, however, comma. I have another video all about how to use conjunctive adverbs. So if you'd like to know more about how to use therefore, in addition, for example, etc., you can check out that video. Okay, let's move on to number 3. To join a series that includes commas. So let's take a look at an example and then I'll explain it. Soccer is especially popular in South America, Europe, where many famous players live, and Africa. So we're going to call this a series because we're joining 1, 2, 3 things. Usually when we have a series like this, we join them with commas. For example, I love ice cream, chocolate cake, and brownies. But this series doesn't work like that because inside this one, we have a comma and we have this small clause here that describes Europe. So because we have a comma inside here, we're going to separate these 3 things with semicolons. This makes sense if you replace these with commas and you'll start to feel that it's confusing. If we say soccer is especially popular in South America, comma, Europe, comma, where many famous players live, comma, and Africa, the commas then become confusing because they're separating different things. So it's better to separate the series with semicolons. Finally, number 4, to join 2 independent clauses that have a comma inside or that are very long, that are lengthy. For example, soccer is a team sport, not individual. So it builds community, trust, and sportsmanship. If you're not familiar with the word sportsmanship, that means the quality of playing sports fairly, of going out there and playing sports with a good attitude and being nice to the other players. So if you look at this sentence, you can see that we have 2 parts. Soccer is a team sport, not individual. And then we have a second part. It builds community, trust, and sportsmanship. Inside each of these parts, we have commas. So here we have 1 comma, and then in this part, we have 2 commas for this series. As a result, we are not going to use a comma here because we already have so many commas in the sentence. So to separate the sentence clearly, we're going to use a semicolon. However, I need to add a little warning here, which is that this rule, I would say, is more flexible. A lot of people would use a comma here instead of a semicolon. I wouldn't say that that's an error. So again, this rule would be more flexible. I would say this one is not so common. Okay, so let's go to some examples and we'll take a quiz and we'll test your knowledge of these 4 rules. So let's look at some example sentences and see where we can add semicolons to make these sentences correct. First, soccer is my son's favorite sport. My husband loves it too. So is there a place here where we can add a semicolon? There is. This would follow the first rule that we can join 2 closely related clauses with a semicolon to independent clauses. And if we look here, we can see that this is an independent clause. It has a subject and a verb, and the second one also has a subject and verb. They are closely related ideas, and so we can use a semicolon there. We could also use a comma and the word and. Okay, number 2. Neymar, one of the most famous players, plays in Europe, but he was born and raised in Brazil. So this is rule number 3 that we saw on the previous part. So if you look carefully, you can see that here Neymar is the subject of this clause, and we have the verb plays in Europe. Okay, so that's the first part of the sentence. I'm going to make a line there to show that. But inside this first part, we have commas. In the second part of the sentence, we have the word but, and then we have the verb born and raised, was born and raised. So we have 2 independent clauses. We're joining them with but. Usually when we join with but, we use a comma. However, because there are already commas here, we can use a semicolon to join those 2 clauses. So again, this would be to make the sentence more clear. Because we already have commas inside, we can use a semicolon there. I am going to give you the warning though that I mentioned before, that some people would use a comma here. However, other people will choose to use a semicolon for more clarity. All right, number 3. The World Cup takes place every 4 years. However, the preparations for this event never stop. So here we also have 2 clauses, and we're combining them with however. However is a conjunctive adverb. So the rule tells us that we put a semicolon, the conjunctive adverb, and a comma. This is very common, and it is a rule. Like, you really do need to use a semicolon here, or you could use a period and a capital H to make a new sentence. All right, number 4. Soccer builds endurance, strength, and teamwork. Therefore, it's a great choice for children. So what do we have here? Well, we have a pretty long first clause that includes commas to make a series. Then we have the conjunctive adverb therefore, and we have another clause with a subject and verb. We're going to use a semicolon here to connect them. And next, in the US, the most popular sports are basketball, so that's going to be our number 1, played with teams of 5, soccer, played with teams of 11, and football, also played with 11 on the field. So what do we have here? Here we have a series that includes commas inside it. So remember I told you that when we have a series, like I love ice cream, cake, and brownies, we separate the series with commas. But when the series includes commas inside, like basketball, played with teams of 5. So played with teams of 5 is a reduced adjective clause that describes basketball. So this first thing here, basketball, includes commas inside. So to join these things, we're going to need to use semicolons. Otherwise, we have too many commas and it just becomes confusing. So where are we going to put our semicolons? Can you check? So we're going to put the first semicolon after the first thing, which ends right here. Okay, we're going to change this comma to a semicolon. And one more. We're going to put it right here before the third one. So let's take a look at the sentence again. In the US, the most popular sports are basketball, played with teams of 5, soccer, played with teams of 11, and football, also played with 11 on the field. So those are the 4 rules of using semicolons. I would say that the most common or the most important one for you to know is this one here that joins 2 clauses with a conjunctive adverb. It's very, very common, especially in academic writing for school. Another one that you should also know is joining 2 independent clauses with closely related ideas. So instead of using comma and, you can use a semicolon. And another one that is pretty important is joining a series when the series includes commas inside. This is to make the sentence more clear because there are already so many commas. So we use semicolons to join the 3 things. So I hope that this video helped you to understand the rules of using semicolons. Please check out the other videos about how to write clear sentences in English, and check the description box below because I'm going to leave a link to a handout that has these rules for you. You can keep that to help you study at home. Don't forget to give this video a like if you found it helpful. I appreciate your support so much. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Take care, and I'll see you next time.